So before we get started, I should mention here in our FPS pawn that, well, the pawn is supposed to be as dynamic as possible. It's supposed to work with any weapon combination, and we're using this primary and secondary weapon struct variables here as our sort of weapon slots, but we shouldn't be calling to any particular class or like child class of our weapon here in the blueprint, which we've been pretty good about, except for here in the drop weapon tree, where we're actually calling on the AK and the Glock, and we need to switch this so that we're just using the primary and secondary weapon slot. To do that, though, we're going to have to make ourselves a new file over here. So let's right-click in our content browser here, go to blueprints. What we need is enumeration, and I'm just going to call this weapon list. So enumeration, it's just a list. So we're going to go here to our enumerators. We'll make 4. So it's just a list, just a variable with a list that we can call on in our blueprints and stuff, and like use as a variable as well. So our first one here is going to be none. We want a placeholder for if we've got no weapon. And then down the list, we'll go AK, then Glock, and then MP5. Well, actually, we'll move the MP5 up so it's near the Glock. So we've got primaries and then secondaries. Okay, so just hit save on that. And the next thing we want to do is set our weapon names in our weapons themselves. So we'll open up the AK and the Glock, head over to the construction script, and we'll see here, this is where we're setting our default variables for this weapon. Let's just come straight out of here and set... Oh, wait, we have to do it in the weapon base. So open up the base weapon first, my mistake, and we need to add a new variable here. We'll call it name. And this name is going to be of our weapon list, enum, our weapon list enumerator. So with that done, we'll compile and save, and now we head to our weapons and we'll set our name variable. So go set name. Here is our default here, and our AK obviously is going to be set as the AK, and we'll compile and save that. I'm just going to copy this node just so it's a little easier. Drop this in the Glock and do the same thing, except obviously call it a Glock. The next thing to do is to set our weapon name in the pickups, in our pickup blueprint. So we'll open up the AK and the Glock pickups. Let's see, our pickup AK here, we should see our, oh right, in our struct. So we have to open up our struct and add our name to it. So we'll open up a thing, make it a new variable. I'm just going to move this to the top so that it sits on top of the stack here. This will be called name, and it's like before going to be an enum, our weapon list enum. So we'll save that. There we go. Now it's appeared. There we go. In our pickup blueprints, whenever we set the gun data struct, it's going to include this primary weapon name here, or secondary weapon name, depending on which one. So we'll make this our AK. This is our AK pickup, and make the Glock our Glock. File and save both of those. And then we're ready to change our FPS pawn. The first thing to do is to sort out our weapon switch. So let's open up our weapon switch function. You see here we've got our name in our variables here. So we'll just add these to our set weapon files. Oh, I might have already gone and added it. Right, so if you're not seeing it here in the left, add it over here as our weapon list enum. And then we'll grab our name out of here. Well, we want to get our set node first. So we'll set our name. Set name, there we go. Remember, this is coming out of our cast to our weapon-based blueprint. So we're getting this as the variable over here that we've declared as name. So where are we? So let's plug this into our tree here, set it up at the end of our sets, plug this into false, and this will come out of our input here. So then in our weapon switch, we're declaring our name in our set weapon vars macro for both of our weapons. Okay, with that done, we can change around our drop blueprint here. We can finally get to making this change. So let's delete this branch and this equal class for both of our results here from our weapon equipped integer, and we can add a lot of this to a macro. So let's grab all of this and these two nodes here. So that's our spawn actor pickup, our target there, our add impulse, and then our set child actor class, plus these calculations we do from our throw point. Let's grab all of that. Actually, yeah, that should be fine. So let's right click, collapse to macro, and we'll call this our drop weapon macro. Okay, so let's open it up. We're going to need to, for one, change up some of our inputs here. Also, we can disconnect these guys. We don't need to output these things. So grab our outputs. just remove, where are we? There we go. Just remove all of these. And we'll drag our set child actor onto that so we get our exit to the macro. And then our input, so only input is going to be our name from our weapon list. So we'll just go rename this to name and make sure that it's set to our weapon list. And we should be good to go. So in fact, let's get ourselves an input to this macro, and then I'll plug in our name input here. What we want to do is to switch on weapon list. So it's going to grab our enumerator and make it a switch node, just like this. So this will be the first connection here from our input, my mistake, and we want to go from our switch on weapon list, so it's going to be the AK. So we're spawning the AK from this switch, but we'll be using this switch node here to spawn every actor in our primary weapon slot. We'll go and cancel that. We're not going to need that. So we're getting our weapon slot here with this weapon equipped integer, which is going to switch on 0 or 1 to get our primary or our secondary. And then we're going to go into our drop weapon macro, which in fact I'll change this input so that we've got our execution on top. There we go. We'll compile that, head back to our event graph, and then we can hook up our blueprint here. So I've just duplicated the drop weapon macro, and we're going to plug in set our secondary weapon name and our primary weapon name into each of these macros. And then we'll just go just like we did before, 0 and 1, just like that. And we're not going to need any of this. Oh, there we go. But we will need these guys. So we'll drag these back up and then set these back to our 0 for when we drop the weapon. All right. So that should make sense. So we're just moving all of our drop functionality into a macro, and we're switching on this switch on weapon list. So if we wanted to, in a minute, when we're going to make our MP5, I'm just going to duplicate this node, drag out of the MP5 here, and we'll be switching to our MP5 pickup once we've made that. And obviously with the same rotation, location, and scale information. Okay. So the reason that we're doing this is to make sure that we're not calling any actual child actor in our main player, rather calling the basic weapon-based blueprint or the name of the current weapon that we have equipped, which we've set in our AK and our Glock and our corresponding pickup blueprints. In fact, we can go a little bit further. If we open up our drop weapon here, so as the list of weapons that we build out into our game is going to grow, and therefore our enumerator is going to have more and more entries to it. For example, like if you have a melee slot for a knife, hint hint, we can make it sort of a bit easy to look at, like cut down on these lines here. So for these calculation nodes, we grab all these guys, just right click, we'll convert this to collapse to a macro as well. We'll call it our throw calc. We can then right click this and, oh wait, I made a mistake. We don't want a macro. We want to grab these guys, collapse them to a function. There we go. And then we want to make this a pure function. So there it is. We tick pure over here on the right in the details, and it converts it to a pure function. That's just a function that doesn't have any input or output. It's just going to make some calculations and call itself, just on its own. In a similar way to how we convert a cast to a pure cast. But anyway, I've gone and failed to name it. So we'll call this one our drop weapon calc, just like before. And we can go and name these inputs. So we'll double click it to open it up. And in our outputs here, let's see, what do we got? We have our location. So our top one is our location, which we'll just call location. Our next one down is our scale. And the next one down is our forward vector. There we go. And our bottom one obviously is rotation. So with those set, and we'll compile and save that. It's just going to look a bit better when we're making these calls, sort of with each and every time we call this node. So if we duplicate this even, you can see that we can just hook this up and it'll work just the same. I missed scale. There we go. And the forward vector, obviously, which we use a bit later on. Okay, so this should get you guys comfortable with collapsing to function, collapsing to macro, and neatening up your code this way, because this really cuts down on space in your blueprint. And can even, in some cases, improve your performance, your optimization. Okay, so we'll compile that, we'll save it. Oh, and before I forget, we obviously have to set up our Glock here as well, so we might as well just use what we got here. Change this to Glock. We want our, where are we? We want our pickup Glock. And we'll also want to add an impulse. And not set our child actor, we can do that from the one node, but we'll add our impulse. Oh, there we go. Dragging our target. And our impulse will be the forward vector. There we go. And then this can just get plugged into our set child actor at the top here. Because that's obviously when we're dropping the gun, we're setting our child actor class back to our weapon base. Okay, so that's good. We're just going to have to add these few nodes sort of every time that we spawn a new weapon. Actually, we can even save one more. So let's delete this add impulse. Move this around a bit because we can plug in multiple targets to our add impulse node and multiple executions to our add impulse. It'll just take in any target. So we can do that and save ourselves even more space. And yeah, leave like that. Although I might change up the order of some of these things. So our forward vector can probably go to the bottom, and our scale go under rotation. Just because I like them all nice and neat. And let's get a unique one of these just for our forward vector for our impulse. Even neater. Let's put this underneath. Why not? Okay, cool. So that's our function done. And one last thing before we wrap up here. Let's head back to our pickups, because it was someone mentioned to me that when you pick up a gun, you have to tap the key to equip the gun. And I wanted to know how would you do automatic, like an auto equip functionality. And that's pretty simple. So we'll come into the pickups and come out of our cast here. All we want to do is just call our weapon switch function. It's as simple as that. So we just call our function here. I'll just copy this. Do the same for, where am I at? The Glock. Yeah, so once we touch the weapon, the pickup, it'll fire off this weapon switch, and that should smooth things out a bit for us. And we can toggle this as well if we wanted to. And that should stop any sort of weird, like glitchy outputs. In fact, if we compile, we'll just like save everything. With that to save and then hit play, it all should work exactly as we've come to know it. So now I'm auto-equipping the Glock when I run over it, and I'll auto-equip the AK as well. I mean, this will only apply if there's nothing already in that weapon slot as per our blueprint. And then we can throw them around, and it's going to be rock solid for us. All right, so with that done, we can go ahead and implement our... Oh, there is errors. So it's throwing up errors. I think it's because we're trying to call the same add impulse node. So let's just use a different one for each thing. There we go. Oh, better make sure there's only one connection there. That's slightly annoying, but not a problem. Okay, so we'll compile that, we'll save it, and we can move forward. Oh, once that's hooked up. Sidebar, so it was about this point in the recording where my project became corrupted and I was left with nothing, had to start over. But big shout out to Neck on Discord, who hooked me up with an up-to-date project that I could continue to work from. So if things look a little different, that's the reason, but everything works exactly as before. So big shout out to Neck. Remember to join Discord if you haven't already. There'll be a link down in the description. And with that said, let's move forward. So the next thing, second shout out of the video, is I want to draw your attention to the MP5 model that will be included in the download link, also in the description, and to Shy Beast on Discord, who made this gorgeous MP5 skin for it, inspired by Call of Duty Black Ops. I just wanted to include this in the video, and he also said that we could share the textures, so I've included them in a download as well. They're proper, full-on, high-res textures, so hope you guys enjoy, hope you guys like the skin, and yeah, just a huge thank you to Shy Beast for putting that together for the sake of the video. So let's start building out our functionality here. So the first thing will be to go to animations and open up our animation blueprint. So we have this familiar sort of site here. First thing I thought we'd do is let's grab all of this and just right click it, and we're going to collapse it to a function. So we'll call that set vars for set variables, and that'll be the second entry in our sequence here. And then let's just add a new pin, because we'll have to get the name of the weapon in order to be able to call it in our animation blueprint. In fact, let's... no, we're not going to do that. Let's just add a new variable here. We'll call it weapon name. And this will be a variable of type... no, not name. It's our weapon list enum. So call that weapon list. And just compile that so we have access to it in the blueprint. And we're good to move forward. So the next thing, let's just make ourselves a new function. And we'll call this one get weapon name. Oh, can't spell today. There we go. And in this function, we're just going to add this as the third entry here in our sequence. So our little code here is going to cast to the character, get our casted character, set all the variables that we need, and then we're going to get the name of the weapon so that we can go forward and use it in our animation blueprint. To do that, let's just drag off here into a switch on int. Where is it? There it is at the bottom. Switch on int, and we're going to use the weapon switch integer as our selection here, and just add a couple of pins, just a 0 and a 1, obviously just for our primary and our secondary weapon slots. Then let's grab our casted character, just as a get, and we'll drag off and get our primary weapon and our secondary weapon. Oh, where are we? There we go. Get secondary weapon, and we'll split these pins so we get access to the variables within the structure. Just split both of those. There we go. And of 0 or 1, we're going to be setting our weapon name. So we get a set weapon name, one for each of our 0 and our 1 options here in the switch, and use primary as the one coming off 0 and secondary as the one coming off 1. From there, we're going to grab our weapon name here. So let's just drag that in, a control drag for a get, and switch on this variable. So we're going to switch on weapon list. We'll plug in the result of both of these sets into our switch, and then set our weapon name with an alt drag to the corresponding one in our switch here. So for example, for the AK, we'll set this one up, select AK, duplicate this node, one for the Glock, duplicate it again for the MP5, and we'll just hook these up into the correct slots here. And that's pretty much all we have to do. We can come out of here, come out of these set nodes into a return, so that we can, exit the function cleanly. There we go. Compile that, save it, and then back in our event graph, as we can see, they're firing all off just fine. The next thing to do is to head back over to our animation graph, and we have to change this code now because we're calling on the weapon name, and we have more animations for our MP5 as well as for our Glock and AK. So let's just duplicate these 3 nodes here. There we go. Although we're going to have to change up our state machines. So let's just rename. We'll rename this one MP5 ADS Loco, and we'll rename this one just our MP5 Loco. And then we just have to open up our state machines here and change up all of our animations. So this is the ADS state machine, so we'll use our ADS animations just for the idle. All of our jumping ones are going to be the same. We'll just use our regular ADS animation, same with jump loop. Here we go. Boring stuff, this. I know it's boring to watch, but we've got to set this up before we go forward. There we go. And finally, our run is our MP5 ADS run animation. Okay. We compile that, make sure it all works, then head back to animation graph and do the same thing for our regular loco. So this will be all of our not ADS animations. Let's start with our idle, MP5 idle, then jump start, then jump loop, then jump end, and then our run animation. We don't have to change anything else in our state machines because they're going to be the same for every weapon. It's just we're just switching them based on which weapon we're currently holding. And to do that, we need to get rid of our blend poses by int here because we're no longer going to use the integer from our player pawn to do this. Instead, we're going to use the actual name of the weapon. So let's control drag, get our weapon name, and then we want to blend poses weapon list. There we go. And with this node, it's currently got just the one default pose, but if we right-click it, we can add pins for elements that are inside this enumerator. So we'll just add one for each of our weapons. That's the AK, the MP5, and the Glock. And then just hook these up to their corresponding slots here, and then plug this into our default slot. So that's our animation blueprint all finished. The next thing to do is set up our character. Oh, and if you see this in your animation window here, it's just because there's nothing in our weapon name. So if we grab our weapon name and set a default value, say the AK, there we go. It'll get your preview back for you just fine. All right, so let's head over back to our content browser here. We have to make ourselves an MP5 weapon. And look, just for the sake of naming conventions and convenience, I'm just going to rename what we currently have. Instead of AK underscore weapon, I'm going to go weapon underscore AK. And similarly with the Glock, we'll go weapon underscore Glock. Just makes it a bit easier to see, when these things are in a list. And then let's duplicate our weapon AK, and we'll rename it weapon MP5. Open this guy up. And all we'll really need to do is just adjust our mesh here for the time being. Where's our, here we go, here's our weapon. We'll get ourselves our MP5 rigged. Cool. Okay, so it's got my, I'll include this texture too. This was the material that I originally made for the MP5, but let's just get we'll get Shy Beast's gorgeous skin going on. And we'll also go move these other components here, like the lights here, which will position, yeah, somewhere next to the gun like that, and then our muzzle flash as well, which we'll put right in front of the barrel. There we go. So we'll compile that, save it. We can basically leave this as is, although we will change our weapon name here to MP5. And the primary weapon class would be our weapon underscore MP5. And I think that's the only thing to switch here, except in the construction script. Let's make sure that we set MP5 as our weapon name. So with that all sorted out, I think that's all we have to do here for now. Let's make ourselves a pickup for the MP5. So we'll grab just the AK pickup, I suppose. Control W to duplicate and rename this one pickup underscore MP5. Open it up and do a similar thing. So we'll swap out our mesh here. We'll get the MP5 mesh, the MP5 static mesh, that is, and then change our details here. So we'll get our MP5. Our primary weapon class will be weapon underscore MP5. It'll be a primary weapon, so we'll leave our weapon equipped at 0. And that should be what we need to do. We need to match our stats here in our pickup to our actual weapon, but we'll suss that out when we're ready to tweak these numbers. For now though, we can do a little bit of testing by heading back to our editor here, to our level. We'll drop the pickup in the world somewhere. Might put it a little bit further out the way. Here we go. Little bit of rotation there, so it tumbles around on the ground a bit. And then all we should have to do, if we'll save everything first, why not? And then we'll just hit play. Okay, so here we are. There's our MP5. We pick it up, and we're holding onto it just nicely. Okay, so it's still playing the wrong animation, the AK animation. So we head back to our weapon here. So here's our fire event. We'll make sure that we play our arms, AK. We'll need an animation montage for our MP5. So we'll cruise on over here. Where's our arms? ADS fire animation. Let's just create ourselves a new animation montage for that one. And also for our arms, fire animation. MP5 fire animation. There it is. Create anim montage. And now we should be good to go. So back in our weapon, let's get our arms. MP5 fire. The ADS fire, obviously, for our aim down sight is true. And just the regular fire for when we're not in ADS. File that, save it, and, well, I hit play for some reason. Just save, and we'll fix up our reloads as well. So here's our reload. We want the MP5 reload. We'll also need a montage for this. That's our, which one was that? Yeah, so that's our arms. We need our arms, MP5 reload. Create a new montage, and a montage, there we go. And just change it in our montage play. All right, done. And also for our weapon. So this will be our MP5. MP5 reload animation. Where is it? There it is. File that, save it, and we'll have another quick test. So we'll cruise over, we'll pick up our MP5. Okay, so it's not blending properly. We can change that by opening up our montages here, like our MP5 fire. Instead of our blend time at 0.25, we'll set the blend time down quite low. Because as it's a short animation, we want it to blend in and out of the animation as quickly as possible. And we'll do the same thing for our aim down sight animation here. So 0.1 for both. There we go. Save, and we'll just close down that little window. Hit play. Much better. So now we're getting our fire animation working. Our reload animation also works pretty well. Might need to be resized in the window maybe. Let's see if we can just make a slight adjustment to our mesh 1p. I'll just pull it forward a little bit. And just to see how it goes. Yep, that's much better. And when we drop our gun, Ah, the gun's not dropping. Of course, we have to set this in our drop weapon function over here in our player pawn. So let's head over to drop weapon. We need to duplicate these nodes here, or at least we don't need that static mesh because we'll change the actor and make one for our MP5. We'll just hook this up. This needs to be our pickup MP5, drag in our target to the impulse, and then drag the result to our set child actor class. Alright, so now we should have 3 weapons all nicely set up and usable in-game. So one final test. There we go, there's our gun. It's reloading. We'll have to set the notifiers, but we can now throw it on the ground. Alright, brilliant. So let's make an automatic weapon. So let's just go over to our weapon base blueprint and just have a look at some of the events that we've made for it already. So I think it was my last video where we added a stop firing event. So we have fire and stop firing. This is so that we can do like trigger up, trigger down type stuff and make automatic weapons work. So back in our player pawn, we're going to change around the way that we fire our gun. And it's going to be easy as pie. We don't really need to change much anything. Just out of this released of our fire, we just want to get the stop firing event, well, from our weapon base here. So we'll get stop firing and just hook this up to released. And we're done. This is all we need to do in the player pawn. So we'll save that and then head on over to our MP5 weapon. I might just close a couple of these windows. And we can edit the way that our gun shoots. So it's fairly straightforward. What we'll do is we'll come out, we'll break off this event fire for the time being. We use event fire and also stop firing. Not the function, we want the event stop firing. There we go. And a gate. And a gate is a thing that we can trigger over and over again, coming in and out of it based on commands. In fact, the node looks like this. So we have an enter, an open, a close, and a toggle. We'll just be using the enter, open, and close. First off, we need to open the gate so that it's usable, and then enter the gate. And then there's the exit, and we can go back to the enter and just loop around it like that. So let's come out of our fire here. We'll get ourselves another sequence, because we need to, first of all, open the gate, and then we want to enter it. And with our stop firing, we want to close the gate. So when we release that left click, it's going to stop shooting. The next thing we'll do, let's make a little bit more space here, is to get another sequence, just like that. And the first thing we want to do with our sequence is our regular shooting. So we want to fire off our shooting at the first entry of our sequence here, and then we want to delay for the number of time we want to spend between bullets. So come out of the sequence into a re-triggerable delay, a delay that we can loop over and over again, and we'll set it to something like 0.12, and then our completed is going to go into the enter. Okay. Hope that makes sense to you guys. So it's going to fire off our shooting, then it's going to delay for the 0.12 and then re-enter the gate where it will execute this sequence once more. We'll just put this over here, hook this back up. The reason that I've chose 0.12 is because over in our muzzle flash, we have delays of 0.1. So anything quicker than 0.1, any figure lower than that, and then our muzzle flash isn't going to work properly. It's not going to display properly. But 0.12 is quite quick. Let's hit play and test it out. So we'll go grab our MP5. Yeah, so that's as fast as our MP5 is going to shoot. There we go. And then when it's done, we can reload it and start shooting again. So that's automatic weapons in Unreal Engine. Very, very simple little thing. It doesn't take it doesn't take much to actually get going. And we'll head back to our, we'll just copy this for the time being. Just copy that. And I thought it might be fun if we go back to our AK, where is it? Our weapon _ AK, and make a toggle for semi and full auto. So pasting like that is going to have a conflicting node here because you can't use the same event twice, but that's okay. We'll just delete that custom event, hook this back up, and the way that this will work is by using a simple boolean. So if we make a boolean variable, call it weapon, let's say mode, and compile that, we can go to our FPS pawn. We'll just grab this little cast snippet here, and oh, it's going to fire off the weapon base. No, we wanted to do this with the, where is it? AK. Delete that variable out of that. We can add this in the weapon base. So make a new variable, call it weapon mode. Compile that, default it to false. We'll say false is our regular fire, our semi-auto. So we'll come out of here into a branch. Let's just get our weapon mode and plug this in. So if it's true, we'll be full auto. So we'll hook that up to true, and our false is going to go into our regular firing code. So it's going to look a little confusing. If we double click our execution tree here, we can sort of visually get a good guide and see what's going on. So I was going to check our weapon mode for whether we are semi or full auto, and we can do that in our first person weapon pawn here. So if we get our weapon mode, and then let's get a well, actually we want to set our weapon mode. There we go. Let's get a key. Let's call it the B key. Where's our B key? Here we go. B key. There we go. There's the B. So let's come out of here into a flip-flop. This is just going to toggle. So every time this executes, it's going to alternate between A and B. And duplicate our weapon mode here. Plug this into A, this into B, and make sure our target is set. And we'll say when we hit it, will be true. Compile that, save it, and then hit play. So now when we go and pick up our AK, so it's currently semi-auto, but if we hit B, it goes to automatic. And in fact, we can even, let's just play a sound here. So let's play sound. Play sound 2D, and the sound, we'll use our dry fire sound. There we go. So we'll compile that, hit play. So it's going to play that sort of no matter what we're using. So in fact, we might come out of here, make sure that our equipped weapon is able to be fired automatically. In fact, if we go to our weapon base, let's we'll get a new variable here. We'll call it variable mode. Just like that. Compile that again. We'll default this to false so that when we're back in our pawn, let's grab our boolean here out of the weapon base. So we'll get our variable mode. Where was it? Get variable mode and another branch. This up as the condition. So if our variable mode is true, then it will execute this. And for our defaults here, so like our MP5, we want it to just be automatic, to not have a single shot mode. So let's set our variable mode here to false. Where is it? Variable mode. There we go. Set that to false. I'm just going to copy this node for the others. We'll do the same thing in the Glock. Oh, not the pickup. I want the weapon. There we go. Construction script. But then in the AK, in the construction script, we'll set it to true. We don't have to add any of these into the structs or anything like that. This is going to be a thing that's going to be weapon specific. So we'll just set it once in the weapon that we're holding. Then when we hit play, so hitting B does nothing. When I pick up the MP5, hitting B is going to do nothing, but it's going to be full auto all the time. And if I pick up the AK, you can hear that noise. That means that we're changing fire mode. There's single shot, and there's our full auto. So that pretty much wraps up this video. We made some new mechanics here, cleaned up a lot of things. I know it was a little bit less structured than usual. We didn't spend a lot of time on automatic weapons, and it's a pretty long video. But now we're sort of at the end state of our pawn. We shouldn't really have to edit a lot of this going forward, because we can just, at this point, just add more and more weapons to our, our weapon list, and then add more to our little drop weapon macro here, and we can keep building out the game that way. Add as many weapons as we really need. So, thank you guys for watching this far. I hope you've enjoyed the series. And if you've got any suggestions, any requests, anything like that, feel free to leave a comment in the description, and I will catch you guys next time.